everyone, this is Julia with episode number 57 of the Mixology Talk podcast. When most people think of networking, they think of stuffy corporate events with stiff handshakes and awkward small talk. But networking is just as important for folks outside the corporate world, especially bartenders trying to make their way in the world of hospitality. Today we're talking all about networking, how to do it, some tips for doing it well, and why you should even bother. If you want a summary of this episode, you can find it at mixologytalk.com/57. Let's get into it. First of all, why is networking even worth doing? Let's be honest. It's just for Kaji people in corporate, right?
Yeah, like schmoozing around the... schmoozing?
I said Kaji. I'm not sure that's a word.
What is it? The watering tank or the
You're
faucet?
So bad at corporate.
I know. Yeah.
Water cooler.
Water cooler. There we go.
I think it's more coffee machine nowadays.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Networking is a horrible word with a terrible connotation. Really, all it is about building relationships. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today is building relationships, even if we use the N word, networking.
Yeah, and a lot of this is going to be fairly natural and fairly obvious to a lot of you because this is what we do behind the bar every single day. This is not a foreign concept, but there's some other interesting ideas out there about how to use your network and why it's so valuable, especially if you're trying to grow your career. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
So there are some obvious reasons why it's useful. Things like knowing about job opportunities, getting raises, friendships, building community, all that good stuff. But there's also some less obvious stuff as well. And some of that has to do with keeping an eye or maybe an ear to the ground on what's happening in your market.
Yeah, and this changes very, very quickly, and having your network out there to kind of tell you some of the things that are happening is really, really important, really vital. As Julie mentioned, like what's opening? Is there a new restaurant opening? Is there a new bar manager at this one particular bar? You'll find all this stuff out through your network. But there's also a lot of other less obvious stuff too, like if there's a better practice out there, or if there's a really good deal on a beer or, case deals or anything like that, this is a potential that could definitely start to come through your network.
Not only that, but I know a lot of bartenders out there dream of someday opening your own bar. And
I think every bartender does.
Yeah, I think that might be true. If you're going to open your own bar, you are going to need a network, even if it's just for a partner or an investor. That if you don't know anyone, I hope you have a lot in savings.
Right. And, this is definitely, I've heard quite a few of these stories of, people pairing up with investors and, they have the talent running bars and being behind the bar. The other person has the resource and the dream of owning a bar. It seems like a fairly natural pairing. So there's definitely a good way to do that. And it's also another great way just to kind of learn about other things that are happening in your city. Some events out there.
Competitions.
Yeah, definitely. Competitions.
Tastings, all sorts of things. Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I think sometimes networking can really drift into gossip pretty quickly, but as much as I hate saying it, gossip can be really useful as well.
Yeah.
If it's industry gossip.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing about a network is it allows you to be part of this bigger conversation of what's happening in your community, and being able to contribute to that conversation as well.
Because that conversation is happening with or without you. And,
right.
And I think just a little bit of effort will let you sort of have your ear to the ground and hear what's happening around you.
Right. Absolutely.
So all that being said, how do you do it? How do you network as a bartender?
So I think that this is kind of a natural thing for anybody that's in the hospitality industry. It's going to happen whether you want it to or not, just by working in the industry.
That's so true.
Yeah, because, people leave, they go to other places. So you already have a relationship because you guys work together. All of a sudden, they replace that person with a new person. And now your network is starting to grow with or without your knowledge.
Exactly. Whether you planned it or not. So start with your coworkers. And this is just going to grow over time. And it's going to become a long list of people if your market's anything like San Francisco.
Right.
And another thing to mention is that reputation is another piece of networking. And I know there are coworkers that you have that you may not love. There may not be your favorite person on earth, but don't burn bridges.
Absolutely.
like I mentioned before, gossip spreads quickly, and you want the word on the street about you to be positive.
Right. It's funny, like I've moved to different cities, and even like walking into bars in different states, I know people behind the bar just because we all kind of start to migrate out and
Exactly.
go to different places, but your reputation will definitely follow you. And it's funny, like it is a big industry and there's a lot of people in it, but the longer you stay in there, the smaller the community gets. It's incredible.
It's such a small world. It really is. And you can't really escape it and start over because the network extends across markets, across the globe, really.
Right.
So
it does now, that's for
just
sure.
don't burn bridges.
Just be a nice person.
Exactly. Exactly.
One of the other ways to really extend your network, and this is something I really believe in, and I think that is not being utilized enough in our industry, is the people that we buy our products from, our vendors. They are such a great resource for a bartender or a spirits buyer or anybody because they're seeing every restaurant in the city.
Yeah, every day or something.
Probably, in a matter of a week, they're probably going into 80 different accounts.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be hard to do this. I mean, I don't know. From a bartender's perspective, it might be kind of frustrating, right? Because you have vendors constantly coming in, asking for your time.
Oh, they always want your time and they always want to sell you something, but they have a job, they have numbers to meet. And, you could be mean about it and just say, get the hell out of here. Or you can be nice about it, extend them some courtesy.
Right.
And, help them whenever you can. But they are such a great resource in the bar community.
I think you got a job because of one of your vendors once, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in managing, and I realized that I really miss bartending. I wanted to get back into it. So that's how I reached out to my community, and I asked the vendors and said, hey, guys, I told them what I was doing. I said, I'm looking for a bar job. If you know of anybody that's hiring a really nice place, please let me know. And obviously, we have a great relationship. I'll make sure that I pay you back in kind, basically, is kind of the unspoken agreement. But it's true, it's they got me a job within a couple of weeks. And
did they get you the job or did they just get you the introduction?
They didn't get me the job. They got me the introductions. And
which is half the battle.
Exactly. So that's all it took. And then, from there, everything worked out really well.
The rest is history. Absolutely.
But a very important resource in our industry is our vendors. So be nice.
Be super
they're good
nice.
People.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about reputation. If you want a bad reputation to spread quickly, tell a vendor.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So another one that we don't really talk about a lot is your regulars.
This must matter. It must depend on what kind of bar you are, right?
It very much so depends on that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of all very similar in different stages. So for me, I worked in a financial district and of San Francisco, and a lot of my regulars were lawyers and bankers and stuff. So that was kind of my network that I was able to build, and it was interesting because a lot of them were having conversations about, oh man, I could really use a good PR person, or I knew somebody that was in housing law or anything like that. And if I had a regular and I trusted them and I knew they did a good job and were highly regarded, I would absolutely extend my network and introduce them.
Well, and even beyond that, I think you set up a couple good dates too,
yeah,
right?
I did. I love doing that.
I'm not sure if that qualifies as networking, but
kind of. I would say so.
It is relationship building.
It is relationship building. That's for damn sure. Well, if everything goes well, anyways.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's risky.
Right.
If it goes poorly, maybe that reflects on you. I'm
right.
not sure.
Exactly. But it is really a powerful thing to be able to introduce two people that have a common interest, goal, agenda. They're trying to solve the same problem.
Exactly. So speaking of networking behind the bar, there are industry bars out there, and I think that we all sort of know where our local industry bars are. This is where you go when you get off from your shift.
Right. Exactly. You're not going to see your customers there. You're going to see other people that are working in the industry. You're going to see other servers, bartenders, barbacks. And these are some of the most fun bars to hang out in because, it's not about the Manhattan that's stirred 40 times in one direction and 40 times in the other. It's usually about getting a beer and a shot and just hanging out and turning up the music and having a great time.
Everybody's sort of been through the same fire together, and
Exactly.
yeah.
You got that camaraderie happening every single night. But
this isn't going to be a formal handshake environment, but it is a great place to meet people
and share experiences with other people. And you're going to know other people already in that bar. All of a sudden, they're going to introduce you to other people. It's a great way to extend your social circle.
Exactly. Another way to do it is perhaps a little bit more official or professional, and that is through industry organizations. We've talked a little bit about industry orgs before. In this case, I'm referring to particularly the International Bartenders Association outside the U.S. and the USBG, or the United States Bartenders Guild, inside the U.S.
Yeah, these are some I can't speak to the IBA, but I know the USBG is a fantastic organization. A lot for bartenders and bartending career and education. And if you're serious about tending bar and being in this industry for a while, I would highly recommend getting involved with the USBG.
The whole point of these organizations is networking. It's connecting people with other people in the industry and helping each other.
Yeah, and after a while, you go to a couple of these events, you're going to start to see the same faces over and over and over again. And it's just natural that you're going to start to share these experiences and, get to know each other really well.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think you got a couple of your consulting gigs from just showing up at USBG events.
Yeah, actually, I did.
Just showing up, meeting people. I mean, not pitching, not
just being there and, having a good reputation, doing good work.
Exactly.
And, things start to happen.
Well, and even on the other side, I know that every USBG is different. And in San Francisco, at least, they have a really strong focus on bringing experts in and making them available to members. So, for example, you'll see distillers coming in from large brands and doing tastings, educational tastings, that are limited to something like 8 people.
Yeah.
So you can sit around one table and have a conversation with the distiller of a massive global brand.
Yeah, I can't. So many different brands have come through the doors through the USBG in San Francisco. It's incredible, like master blenders from vermouth houses and tequila companies. And,
I think Courvoisier was here recently.
Yeah, and they do special events and dinners and stuff, and you're actually able to ask questions and get some really interesting perspective. So for this particular one, I can't remember if it was Courvoisier or one of the other cognac houses, but I was able to ask the master distiller at the time, like, what is your favorite vintage cognac? Because he has to be able to taste every single year, going back as far as their cognac libraries go. And his response was really interesting. I never thought about it before. He said it was right after World War I, there was a harvest, but all of the men were out fighting the war, or during World War I. So the only people that could pull the harvest of grapes for cognac were women. So he said that you could definitely taste the influence, and then he kind of went through this whole description of why, they're a lot more delicate with the fruit and they were a lot more caring about putting in the basket, or instead of like volume, they took a lot of care with the grapes.
Interesting.
And it carried through in a final I know. And that's not something I would have ever found out.
No.
If I wasn't part of that conversation.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. And then
somebody needs to start an all-female cognac company.
Actually, this is kind of a big thing that's happening, and not a big thing, but it's happened quite a few times with vintages in Napa during harvest and stuff. Yep. They'll hire only women to do the harvest because of these things that they've noticed over time. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating, and you hear all these really cool stories. And like I mentioned, the USBG is a fantastic organization. They're all over the country, a lot of major cities.
And if there isn't one in your area, start one. Oh my gosh, you want a networking opportunity.
Right. If you're the president of your USBG chapter, you're doing pretty damn good. You're going to know everybody. And you're going to have a lot of contact with a lot of major brands. And I'm not sure what it would take to open up your own chapter. I think it's like 25 signatures or something like that. But
it's worth looking into.
Definitely. If this is something you're excited about and you don't have one, absolutely reach out to that the USBG.
Exactly. And sort of on a related note, outside of these industry organizations, there are often events, competitions, conferences, all kinds of these things happening all over, your market, all over the US, all over the world.
Right.
And these are great opportunities to meet people. I know that, gosh, when we were walking around Tails a couple of years ago, we couldn't walk 10 steps without somebody saying, "Hey, Chris," and stopping and shaking your hand.
Right. And it's just people that I've worked with in the past and that have moved on, or, people that we've met over the years. And, it's just another great thing about, extending out your network and being really deliberate about networking.
Right. And they turn around and introduce you to the person next to them, and your network grows.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
So if events are happening near you, competitions are happening near you. By the way, competitions are a great networking tool. Find out who's judging, enter the competition, and have a conversation with the judge afterwards.
Right.
They usually are happy to give feedback about how things went, and it's a great way to start the conversation.
Oh, yeah. And, especially with competitions, this is such a great resource, and you should definitely, if you're interested in competing, I could not recommend it highly enough. It really helps you kind of hone your skills, and you meet other really talented bartenders.
Absolutely. So last but not least, this is an idea. I wasn't even sure if we should include this because it's kind of wacky, but Chris suggested farmers markets.
And it wasn't my suggestion, actually. This was a story I heard from a very recent coworker, and we were talking about, it was networking or a story about his wife finding a job in the kitchen.
Ah.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, how'd you go about it? And basically, the story was that, his wife wanted a job in the kitchen. He knows a lot of chefs and a lot of people in the city. So he went to a farmer's market. And I'm not talking like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking like 6 in the morning.
Yeah, I don't go at 6.
Because the only people that are crazy enough to go to a farmer's market at 6 in the morning are people that are buying produce.
Are chefs.
Most likely chefs.
Exactly.
So that's how he did it. And it's just that conversation like, hey, how are you? How are things?
Yeah.
How you been? What are you up to? Actually, my wife is looking for a job. Next thing you know, she's working in the kitchen.
Exactly. So I don't know if this is going to work for you, but if you're feeling spunky, you have a couple extra cups of coffee and you go to the farmer's market at 6 a.m., buy some super fresh broccoli and
right.
see who's next to you. Might work out.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So I thought we might close off this conversation with a couple tips for networking within the bartender community, because let's be honest, it's not the same as corporate. It's just not. And
it's a lot more fun.
Oh, that's for sure. That is for sure. So the first thing I would say, which is very different from corporate, is that Facebook is a fantastic networking tool.
Absolutely. When you meet somebody in the bar community and you kind of hit it off, you want to have this relationship kind of continue on. And Facebook is basically the LinkedIn for bartenders.
It sure seems like it.
Yeah, it's how we communicate. It's how, we keep track of other people. It's just a constant stream of information. And there's some really fantastic knowledge sharing that's happening on Facebook in these bartending communities.
I've seen some incredible conversations. Somebody will ask a question about, I don't know, how do you use some sort of garnish? And there'll be 400 comments.
Right. Yeah. And I remember one a couple of years ago, and it was a conversation about ice machines. And it started this like epic thread. Everybody was weighing in on why they hate this one machine or why they love it. And it was just like, oh, wow, holy cow. There are 3 new brands of ice machines that I've never heard of before. And now you can start to, look into it and reference it. And,
you learn something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So for some reason, Facebook works for bartenders. So if you don't have a Facebook account, you are missing out.
I know. And what year is this?
I know it's probably, the evil overlord that'll take over the world. But in the meantime, it's a great networking tool.
Right.
So definitely consider that. And like Chris said, when you meet people, consider friending them. And what I've seen is that that's pretty standard culture in the bartending world. And it's a great way to keep track of where people go.
Right.
People move around so quickly in this industry. It's really hard to keep track, and Facebook is a great way to do that.
Yeah. Now, this is another one of my tips that I may have talked about a long time ago or on our website, was business cards.
I know business cards feel like they're super corporate, but I think they're really useful for bartenders too.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm the manager, I'm the owner, anything like that. it could literally just be your name, your phone number, and your email address on there.
Exactly. And maybe it should be, you know, by having your own personal calling cards, you can use them for anything, personal or professional.
Right, exactly. And Vistaprint, they're so cheap. You can design a bunch of different cards. They're not a sponsor, but they're so reasonable that you just go there, get like 1,000 of them for like $1.50 or something. I don't even know how cheap it is.
And if you don't need them, you can use them as kindling.
Right, exactly. But you know, they're a great way to just stay connected and meet new people. And especially going into the holidays, a lot of your regulars, a lot of people that are going through the bar, they're looking to have parties at their home. They don't know how to bartend, so this is another great way to earn some extra money too, potentially.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And year round, you know, folks may be looking for folks to help out with their events across the board. So
right, exactly.
Having a card you can just pick up and hand to somebody is so much easier than, you know, having wet hands behind the bar and
phone shuffle.
Try to find your phone and your hands are wet and then you drop it in the well and then your phone's destroyed. And this hasn't happened to me, I swear.
No.
So last but not least is something that Chris sort of taught me, and that is around visiting. When people go somewhere new, as in they take a new job, I think it really, really helps to sort of strengthen your network, to stop by, show your support, fill a bar seat, and say hello.
Right. And, you know, if you're in a new position and all of a sudden you're bringing in a bunch of new people to this business, they're going to look at it and say, oh man, holy cow, we got a good one. So it's another way of showing your support and your friendship and, you know, your kind of loyalty, like, hey man, I want the best for you. And it's not about getting free drinks. It's about just kind of continuing that relationship and that experience and helping a friend out.
And let's be honest, this is the best kind of networking. You're at a bar.
Yeah, this is so much better than corporate.
It's true. I'll definitely give you that.
Right.
So if you're not big on networking, I hope we've convinced you to at least give it one more try. The good news is that for folks in the industry, it's usually comes pretty naturally to you. And maybe you're one of those introvert types, but either way, I think it's so, so important to build your network, to maintain your reputation, and just get to build those relationships beyond the folks that you're working with today. So hopefully this won't be too much of a stretch. Do you have any stories about how your network has helped you find a better job or build your career in any way? Definitely let us know in the comments over at mixologytalk.com/57. We would love to hear them. Thanks so much, everyone. We will see you in a couple weeks.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.